You're listening to the Nutrition Experts Podcast, featuring guests who take the scientific talk about food and break it down for practical use. You've heard the phrase, "You are what you eat." Come find out what that really means. Experience conversations with experts in the field of nutrition and understand the power of food for our health, well-being, and beyond. Now, here's your host, Registered Dietitian and Nutritionist, Mathea Ford.
Hi there, it's Mathea. Welcome back to the Nutrition Experts Podcast. The podcast featuring nutrition experts who are leading the way using food starts today, right now, with our next guest. This week is our news edition with Janet Brancato. So, Janet, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mathea. It's so great to be back, and Happy New Year to you.
Oh, thanks. Happy New Year to you, too. I'm excited to have you on the show, talk about our topics today. If somebody hasn't listened before, will you tell them a little bit about yourself?
Again, I'm Janet Brancato. I'm a registered dietitian. I've been a dietitian over 20 years, and I've worked with groups and individuals, adults and pediatrics, counseling them in various stages of health. Currently, I have an online virtual practice, telehealth practice, Nutopia.com. I have a food blog, and I provide tools like meal planning and recipes as well.
Great. So let's get into the topics. I have a few topics to talk about this morning, and then we're going to talk a little bit about New Year's resolutions since it's been about a week, and you may or may not still be sticking with your resolutions, but we have some ideas to help you if you're still wanting to do some changes. So I wanted to talk first about Moringa because it's a new kind of supplement that I get a few questions about, and I actually take it myself just because I believe that it helps with the antioxidant factors. But I wanted to talk about Moringa because I think it's becoming something dietitians are getting asked more about. So there's research that talks about what it's good for. There was a review that says it has anti-inflammatory, antioxidative properties. And these are animal studies that showed it helped with glucose a little bit and some anticancer properties, which have been studied, but they're not really sure about, human roles. So, Janet, have you ever heard of Moringa?
I really haven't. It was something new to me, but very interesting to read about. There's so many types of plants, natural sources out there that could be so beneficial. Natural sources of anti-inflammatory and high in antioxidants. And this one, they say the entire plant is edible: the leaves, the bark, the flower, the fruit, the seeds, and the root. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But commonly what's used in the United States are the leaves. And like you said, it could be part of a supplement blend, or sometimes they're found in smoothie mixes, teas, kombucha. So you can find it in different forms. And like you mentioned, it's been possible applications are for diabetes, hypertension, and asthma, and cancer prevention.
I do want to warn the listeners, if you are, taking medications, you don't want to just start taking Moringa. You want to make sure you talk to your healthcare practitioner and verify that it's not going to interact with any of your medications. And they may or may not know that. So they may steer you away from it, but we just wanted to talk about it because I think it's an up-and-coming thing that we as dietitians and doctors and nurses are probably going to get more questions about. I've known people put it in their smoothies. I've seen that. Of course, you can get it in a pill where you can take it in a pill.
And I think with all of these supplements, you just have to make sure it's a reputable source that you're getting it from, because sometimes the concentrations might be different. And you have to be careful what else is maybe in that supplement, So always reputable sources.
Yeah, you want to make sure it has testing. Yeah, so think about Moringa in the new year. And, it has antioxidants. Antioxidants are always helpful. And maybe, you don't like vitamin C or whatever, you may consider it as a different source. So okay, so another topic I want to talk about, I've talked to a few dietitians in the last couple weeks about FODMAP diets, something I did not know anything about before I started doing some interviews with dietitians about FODMAP. So let's talk about this. It's FODMAP S', and it stands for fermentable oligo, di, and monosaccharides and polyols. So it's a specific diet, and the reason they use the word FODMAP is because they don't want to always say all those words. It's a diet where it's shown to improve some symptoms in IBS, and basically you start out by removing all these FODMAP items, and then I think you slowly bring them back into the diet a little bit at a time. Janet, have you ever worked with anybody doing a FODMAP?
Yes, yeah, I have. Patients with irritable bowel or GI symptoms, many different symptoms, do find, and it has been documented too, that 50 to 70% has been affected by it. I think it's great and some sort of, good resource for people that are suffering to give it a try, but work with someone, work with a dietitian. Don't do it on your own. It can be very overwhelming because these types of carbohydrates that we mentioned in the acronym, there's a lot of lists of those that are higher in the FODMAPs, which could, increase those symptoms. So you want to work with somebody, especially in the, with the elimination aspect, to know what to eat because, you're eliminating groups of foods. And so now the challenge is, okay, now what can I eat? So working with somebody really does help. I've worked with clients, the elimination, and then there's a reintroduction phase where you slowly start to reintroduce one by one to see if there's any symptoms or reactions as we start to reintroduce some of these foods. With some people, getting the gut to sort of heal and relax and take a break from these foods during that, elimination phase. And then you can slowly see, is there any particular food within those categories that are really the irritant? So instead of leaving out a whole category, you're kind of going one by one to see, and you keep a diary. The client will keep a diary to see if symptoms return with particular food. It's not a long-term diet, it's a short-term diet, but it's a way of sort of isolating foods that might be the triggers.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to think about it. Is it's not a long-term, but you're eliminating all the groups and then you kind of bring them back in a group in a small amount at times. And 50 to 70% of people with IBS seeing results from this change in their diet is amazing. But I think it's great if what you talked about speaking with a dietitian, because if you eliminate some of these things, like some of the disaccharides are things that are in milk. So if you eliminate milk and ice cream and yogurt because it helps heal your gut, that's good. But then you're missing some of those nutrients that those foods provide. So you want to make sure that you're not totally cutting out calcium. You can get calcium in other products, but you just might have to be more cautious or take a supplement if that's the food that's going to affect you the most.
Yes. Yeah. So working with someone to find out choices that would be, if you're cutting out some of the, if you're using more gluten-free versus the wheat or lactose-free type choices, but working with someone to sort of give you a good balance so you get those nutrients that you need.
Now, what do they think that it does, like these FODMAP foods, are they broken down easily by our gut bacteria and then they cause gas?
Part of that is the fermentation process in the gut. So with fermentation, it's sort of, if these particles are not being digested properly, there's sort of fermentation going on with the bacteria. And so it's giving off gases, it could cause diarrhea, with absorbing more water to trying to get your gut to sort of dissolve or digest these food particles. But when they're not digestible, it sort of can cause the diarrhea or bloating or other GI symptoms, pain. So it has to do with, your body trying to digest and ferment these carbohydrate sources.
So even your good gut bacteria is digesting this and causing, it's the bacteria you want in your gut, but it's affected by this and your body is just not as able to.
There might be a lack of enzymes. You need certain enzymes to break down for the lactose. You need those lactase enzymes or certain enzymes that you need to help break down these sugars, carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates. And if they're not present or not present enough, you have enough present at that time, Like I said, these are sort of a byproduct, these symptoms and pain of the fermentation process.
Just if you have IBS or you have some gut issues going on, it's recommended you go see a dietitian, but you may want to talk to them about a FODMAP diet. You may want to find a dietitian who specializes in that. It can be, if they don't work with it often, it can be a little bit confusing. Okay, so I wanted to also talk about, it's the new year. Not everybody, but a lot of people have started a new diet, started different changes in their life to be healthier and happier and all those things. So there's a new labeling law that came out last year, and you probably noticed it in your restaurants. When you go, they have, if they have over 20 establishments, then they have the menu boards and they have calorie levels, which the first time I saw them, I was kind of like, oh gosh, yeah, maybe I want to change my diet, my choice, which I think is the point.
Yes. So, I've seen them definitely in chain restaurants, convenience stores. You will see the calorie count, and it can help you to be, again, we talk about being mindful, being aware. So it just is giving the person a chance to make that decision with the awareness, because, most people underestimate the calorie content on a menu. So just being aware, and whether you choose to make a change or not, at least what the calorie count is. So I think it's a good thing. It can definitely help people make changes, improve, maybe help with weight loss or reduce chronic diseases, that kind of thing. The more information, I think, the better. So it's just another tool to help people make good choices.
I think an interesting thing that has come out of this, like I'll use Panera for an example. They have online the ability to kind of create your own food. And so you can go to their website and you can look and it'll tell you the calories, but you can also check off and add or subtract different ingredients, and it'll change the nutritional profile. So if you're watching the amount of carbs or the amount of fat that you're eating or the amount of protein, if you have a sandwich and you don't want the mayo, for example, but you do want lettuce, you can check and mark those. And I really appreciate the fact that restaurants have done that. I know Panera does it. I know I've seen it at Arby's on their website. You can really get down into the details, and I appreciate them letting consumers have some of that control, because then you can go into the restaurant and say, at Panera, for example, I want a chicken salad sandwich, but no this, or this. And it'll make you, and the important thing also, I think, is to know those numbers before you take a bite of your food, because it's really hard afterwards to subtract calories if you've already eaten it.
Yeah, and a lot of these restaurants have, like you said, the online menus. So I tell a lot of clients, look online first, because sometimes when you get to the restaurant or you get to the place and you're hungry, you smell those delicious smells, and you get overwhelmed by all the choices, and it gets hard to make that decision. But if you think about it before you go, like you said, and you peruse the menu and you look at the calories, some people are looking more at sodium levels. They're trying to watch their sodium intake, so you can find that out online. And it will help you to feel more confident once you get to the restaurant or the store or wherever it is that you're going. You're going to feel more confident. This is what you want to have, and you're ready for it. So I think that if you do have the time to look ahead of time, like we mentioned last month with the Starbucks menu, if you kind of have your order in your head or you write it down or something, that's actually a good practice. That's a good tool and a practice to, include when you're going out, especially if you go out frequently. There's people that you out lunch out every day, or they're getting these coffees out every day. So it's a good tool to kind of look online ahead of time so that you know what your choices are going to be.
Yeah, I think you don't realize all the stuff that they add to food at a restaurant. Like you at home, when you make a sandwich, you may not naturally put mayo and ketchup or whatever on it, but at a restaurant or at a store, at a quick service place, they probably do. So looking online ahead of time, you can see, oh yeah, they're going to add this, so I want to tell them not to add that. And that way you have a lot more control. And so that's a great way to help control your calories and also just be a more aware consumer. So it also mentioned a little bit about this being an opportunity for dietitians to go in and help customers or restaurants reformulate recipes. So that's something I do with Renal Diet Headquarters. I don't help restaurants necessarily, but I take recipes that I like or use and I adjust them to be appropriate for people with kidney disease, for example. So I'll switch out some of the higher potassium foods. I'll reduce the amount of protein and I'll increase maybe the amount of some other vegetables. And that recipe is adjusted and changed so that it's good for people with kidney disease based on their nutritional needs. So dietitians can offer that type of service if you like doing recipes, if you like cooking, for example, and you want to help. They can, you can work with them, of course, on a paid basis, but adjust their recipes if they want to have lower fat recipes, if they want to have lower calories. You may even do this with local restaurants if they're looking to have a light menu or develop some lighter options.
It sounds like a great opportunity for dietitians to definitely get involved in the process, helping restaurants and helping customers and kind of almost like a teamwork. I think that's excellent.
There's a lot of gluten-free stuff going on. People are moving towards, less simple carbs and those types of things, but also gluten-free flours. And there's already some gluten-free flours out there that are pretty common. I think there's almond flour. I'm trying to think of some other ones. There's like oat flour, potato flour.
Quinoa flour, oat flour, chickpea. There's a lot of bean-based flours now too.
Yeah, so this article that we were looking at is on today's Dietitian from May, but it talks about some other alternative gluten-free flours that you may not have heard of and how they work. Each one has kind of its own type of characteristics, but one of them was banana flour, which was kind of surprising to me.
Yeah, made from unripe green bananas, peeled, sliced, dehydrated, and ground to make this alternative gluten-free flour.
Yeah, so it's going to have more starch because bananas are naturally a little higher in starch and carbohydrate. I think they say it would work well on its own because it mimics a little bit more of the gluten type flours, but it can be a little higher in calories too.
It's a light and fluffy texture. It does have a hint of banana flavor when you use it for baking, but it's high in that resistant starch, which again, we were just talking about the fermentation process. So it's kind of a prebiotic for the good bacteria.
Yeah, and it works on a low FODMAP diet too. Then it talks about sweet potato flour. It's probably very similar. They're dried and ground into a flour. It's going to have sweet potatoes are going to have a decent amount of carbohydrate in them.
It works really well in a quick bread, cookies, breading, coating, and adds a nice little sweetness to the flour.
Yeah, and you can use it to thicken up some gravies and sauces too. Just it has a little bit more of that cornstarch or flour feel to it. So, and then pumpkin flour, similar. I'm thinking to sweet potato flour. Usually, you're not going to use it as the only replacement. You're going to mix it, and any of these, these are going to be more expensive. The ones we're talking about, so you want to mix them probably with like some almond flour, chickpea, quinoa flour, just to not only reduce the cost, but also to get some of those properties that are closer to, you want it to taste like a regular gluten bread, but not obviously have the gluten.
Exactly. Yep. You can mix it with other flours. You can use it for baking pancakes and even it says smoothies too.
The one I liked was the wine flour. Did you read about the wine flour?
I did. Wine flour, which I was, surprised about that one, but it's actually from fermented grape skins. The juice is pressed out of the wine grapes and the skins are dried and ground into a fine powder, and it gives it a really stunning color. There's flavor, aroma of the glass of wine without the alcohol. So, and again, you use it sparingly. It mentions not to use it in a large quantity. Small quantities can really make a good effect and give it a little sweet wine flavor. Could even be good in like gravies and sauces, but definitely can be pretty versatile.
Yeah, so I was watching, speaking of wine a little bit, I was watching Rachel Ray the other day, and she was adding a little wine to her dish. And she said, just make sure, it's okay to buy a little less expensive wine, but make sure it's a wine that you enjoy when you drink it, because it's going to get concentrated and be stronger with that less, obviously not the alcohol. You're going to bake out the alcohol. You're not going to have alcohol and wine flour, but you're going to have a flavor from that wine, from those grapes. So if you don't like that, or if it's not appealing to you, it's going to be more concentrated probably. So it's going to have a little bit of a grape flavor to it. I wouldn't buy a big batch of it at first. Obviously, it's something you want to try if you're interested in this, but make sure that you're interested in that flavor, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I like that it mentioned that it could be a great rub for steaks. So you could rub it on your steak. You can pair it with a cheese sauce. It pairs well with red berries and dark fruits. And it could be a thickener for gravy. Goes best with apples, peaches, and citrus fruits. So it sounds interesting. I will definitely be on the lookout for that one.
And the last one they mentioned was coconut flour. Basically, they dry the coconut and grind up the coconut meat. And I know I've seen a lot of gluten-free stuff that uses coconut flakes in the recipes.
Yep, it's a good replacement for regular flour and cornmeal. And you can use it as a coating like you mentioned. That's really great. And it's very absorbent, helps to retain moisture. So you may need some more liquid in the recipe because of the absorption of the flour.
Yeah, so I was attending this event with the chef from Parade Magazine. His name's John. I can't remember his last name. Sorry, John. But he was talking about, he had several questions, and he was talking about how to make great pizza. And he talked about having higher gluten levels in your flour, which helps with rising and the recipe. And of course, there was the question about gluten-free bread or dough. And he mentioned that you do want to mix some different of the types of flours, because until you find a blend that you like. So maybe you use almond flour and some quinoa flour, and you add in a little bit of coconut flour, and it gives you the texture that you like. Cauliflower pizza crust. If you're going to make a cauliflower pizza crust, you may not want that. I don't think it has a strong flavor, but you may want to add some other flours to it that are gluten-free, so that you get maybe a little bit of that rising result that you're looking for with the pizza crust and that crispness. Also, I think just like with low sodium, gluten-free, you kind of get used to the flavor of these flours. So trying something new can be good, and just be aware that they're always coming out with new ones.
Yeah, I think, like you said, experimenting with different combinations is a great idea. And, try it in different forms. Like you said, if you're making a baked good, or you're just coating, trying to coat some chicken or meat if you're baking, but now with these new flours, you can really, get different colors and flavors and textures. So I think it really is great to add to that variety within your recipes.
All right. So Janet, did you make a New Year's resolution?
I'm not big on resolutions. I do try to take a little assessment from the last year and sort of say, well, what could I do different? Or is there anything, kind of break it down between, goals that I have, personal goals, or goals with my family, and, just different things like that. I know I'm always trying to maybe do some different lifestyle goals for myself, maybe new challenges with keeping active. So I always look for ways to do that. Cooking, I love cooking. Always a goal of mine is to maybe take a cooking class. Now that I feel a little inspired with some of these new flours, maybe trying something out like that. But I do like taking cooking classes and experimenting with new cuisines. So that's always on my sort of bucket list. And travel, I'm big on travel. I like to travel with my family. So I know usually at the beginning of the year, we kind of think about what we want to do as a trip for the summer, together. Have some business goals that I'm working on. So it's in progress. I wouldn't say I have, a specified list just yet, but, when it comes to resolutions, I try to think onto things that I would do long term, not short term, changes that I want to make in my life that are going to just help improve myself as a person and as a, part of my family or as part of my business, that type of thing.
Yeah. So when you think about resolutions, the reasons why people tend to not keep them or give them up quickly, I think is a lot because they bit off more than they really can chew. Saying you want to lose weight or lose 100 pounds, you're not going to do that overnight. You're not going to do that without making a significant amount of changes and choices daily, weekly, monthly, right?
Exactly. Every goal that you have, like you said, if it's losing weight or taking a trip, you have to break it down into steps, right? If you're going to even plan a trip, you have to break it down into steps, what time of year do you want to go away? How much money do you want to spend? So if it's weight loss or whatever it is, there's going to be steps to that process. It's not going to just, like you said, you want to have a plan. You want to have some steps in mind with whatever the goal is that you have in mind.
So I read a book this year, or actually, well, it was early this year, and it was about a concept called lead and lag indicators. And it talked about creating goals using lead and lag indicators. So a lag indicator is something that changes after you make, it's your kind of your end goal. Maybe it's 100 pounds weight loss or something like that. But if you're constantly looking for the 100-pound weight loss, it's hard to find the steps to get there. So the lead goals are things like drink more water, drink water between meals, exercise 30 minutes daily. So those are the things that if you change those, then it will lead to that result that you're looking for with the lag. So think about your goals, whether it's eat healthier, get more exercise, go on a vacation. Think about the things that you need to do, the small steps that you need to make to get to that big goal. So for me, some things for weight loss might be exercising every day, but you also can't out-exercise a bad diet. So I know you've got to, make choices, whether it's a smaller plate, whether it's getting rid of your snack foods between meals, those types of things that can help you break down that big goal into doing things that you think are going to make a difference over the long run. And maybe you don't know what those are, but I think we mostly know. If it was just knowing that was the problem, it's the doing part. So make those small things and work on those every day and hold yourself accountable to those. Did I exercise this week? Did I drink water? Did I have less snack foods? Did I eat more vegetables? Those things, when you put them all together, are going to lead to that big goal.
Yeah, that's great. And sometimes even putting a time to things, meaning trying to be as specific as you can with, if you're picking exercising more, look at it as an appointment with yourself. Like think about the days, the times, specifically what is it you want to do. I think if you can get even a little more specific with those goals, that helps too. It helps, to put it in your schedule, or a certain amount of time, kind of assess, are you a morning person or you're more apt to do it later in the evening? But take each goal and sort of break it down, be a little more specific. And, like I said, steps in mind that will help you to achieve that goal. And like you said, every day that you do it, you're getting closer to your overall big goal. So you're sort of just chipping away, every single day, leading to that big goal.
Yeah, I think you need to realize that the person that weighs 100 pounds less or 50 pounds or 20 pounds less than you do today has different habits. And so if you want to even lose 20 pounds or you just want to exercise more and be healthier, you have to create those habits that person that is, when you think of yourself when you're there, what sort of things are you doing? Are you always eating, green vegetables or colorful vegetables on your plate? Are you always parking far away and walking in? What are those habits that healthy you has, and how do you get there? So I have this friend who has this little challenge that she did, and it was called, she had a friend named James. It was called, What Would Awesome James Do? This guy changed his habits and his activities, and what he would do is think about what he was going to do. So he's going to go to McDonald's, for example. Not that McDonald's is bad, but And he thought to himself, what would awesome James do, which was the future James that he wanted to be? And awesome James would not choose a Big Mac and French fries. He would choose maybe a small fry and a cheeseburger, maybe a salad. But he started making those choices. Every time he made a choice, he would ask himself, what would the future me do, or what would the awesome me do that I'm trying to get to? And he improved his relationship with his family. He lost weight, and he did just basically have a healthier, happier life because he said, think about what I want to be when I grow up, awesome James, and started making those changes. So I think that if you can do those types of things, what would awesome Mathea do? What would awesome Janet do? You can get there.
And I think that people in general tend to get overwhelmed because they set such a big goal for themselves. And if a few weeks into the new year, they're not where they want to be, they sort of give up or get frustrated. But like you said, keep visioning yourself there in the future. It may take a little bit more time, but that's okay. You like I said, you're chipping away at it, and having that vision, having that vision of yourself completing that goal. That's how you want to kind of keep your mindset very positive, as much as you can. So I think that's a great way of looking at it, looking at, making those decisions, being mindful, because I think somebody like that is very tuned into themselves and their habits, and, just slowly making those changes. And over time, it'll get easier and easier. The beginning is when it seems a little more challenging, but as you be consistent with it, and every day you kind of wake up ready for battle, you're ready to kind of, kick it into gear. That's really very important.
Yeah, and if you stop thinking that the minute you fall off the wagon, everything's over, realize
we're human, we're going to have good days and we're going to have not so good days. And that's okay. You get back on track. That's all. One day isn't such a great day. No worries. Just get back on track. You always have that new day to just start over again.
All right, Janet, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. We talked about fun stuff for the new year and some things that happened last year that people should be looking forward to. So you mentioned a little bit at the beginning, but if listeners want to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
So you can connect with me at mynutopia.com. That's my website, and you will find my blog, a little bit about me, possibly working together, about meal planning, and some tools that I have. I'd love to connect.
Okay. Well, guys, this has been another great episode of the Nutrition Experts Podcast, the podcast that is all about learning more so you can do more with nutrition in your life.
You've just listened to an episode of the Nutrition Experts Podcast. Be sure to get more information about this week's episode at www.nutritionexpertspodcast.com. Tune in next time for another great conversation with a nutrition expert and expand your personal knowledge in the field of nutrition, one conversation at a time.